Well, hello everybody. It's Pastor Andy Hagen again, back for another episode in the Bible study called "Who Do You Say That I Am?" This is Jesus' question to his disciples and to all of us. Who do you say that I am? People may say all sorts of things about Jesus. In the end, as we weigh all of those, what is our experience of him? Who is he to us? And I hope to help you have a more informed answer by going through all the various identities that he was known for in his earthly ministry, primarily. We might get to some of the ones that he's known for in his post-resurrection experience, but I'd like to mostly focus on the earthly ones. And today we're going to look at one that I think is delightful, and that is the reminder that Jesus had an identity as a son and a brother. A son and a brother. Now, if you grew up Catholic, you may find that surprising, or if you're not as familiar with Scripture. But it's pretty clear in Scripture that Jesus had brothers and sisters. It's mentioned in the Bible very casually, and it's understood elsewhere that he did in their interactions. Of course, we know about his mother and father. That's not questioned. He's known as the son of Joseph, or the carpenter's son. And Mary is indeed there from beginning to end, even in John's Gospel, at the foot of the cross with her son. But about the brothers and sisters, in Catholic teaching, Mary is a perpetual virgin, and therefore, other than the holy conception of Jesus as her son, she has no other children. And so that doctrine, which develops within the Catholic Church, causes those who interpret Scripture from that tradition to look back and say, it wasn't brothers and sisters, they were brothers and sisters of faith, spiritual brothers and sisters. And they do have some reasoning behind that, and I've heard some theologians from the Catholic Church make some good cases for that. But most scholars in the Protestant tradition have no problem saying they were his brothers and sisters. They really were. He was the first, but others came after, and we don't know how many, but for sure we have 4 named, and then sisters means at least 2. So pretty big family that he was a part of, and that helps us understand he grew up in a family. You know, you wonder, how is it that he was so comfortable with children? Well, he grew up in a family. He was the older brother of younger children. How is it that he could interact with the disciples in such a earthly way, a human way? He grew up with brothers. He knew what they were like, and he enjoyed that interaction. It's no surprise that a group of people followed him. He was used to being in a crowd, the Brady Bunch of Judea, I guess. And so I find it to be wonderful and not in the least bit threatening to my faith to know that Jesus had a family. He was different. He was born in a special way, and not technically Joseph's son, but he was raised by Joseph, and by all thoughts, as we'll see, that mattered to him, and certainly being a part of a family ended up becoming important for the church, as we'll see later. So I would like to look at the first story that we have of Jesus beyond his birth. We're all familiar with the birth stories. There's only one story that covers the distance between the birth, the presentation in the temple, and his appearance as a full-grown person ready to be baptized by John the Baptist. And that's in Luke chapter 2, 41 through 52. You know the story. They're in Jerusalem, as was their custom for Passover. It kind of gives you a chill to realize that was his custom all his life, and that last time he went there, it was his custom to be there, was the one in which he gave up his life. He became the Passover lamb. But here he's a 12-year-old boy. He's going to Jerusalem. Must have been an exciting trip. And while they're there, it's time for them to leave. They leave, and they're in a large group, apparently. Don't notice that Jesus hasn't joined them. Probably thought he was up front or behind, and he gets left behind like Home Alone in Jerusalem. They're frantic when they figure this out and go back to look for him, only to find him fine as can be. He's in the temple. He's amazing. The temple scribes and Pharisees and Sadducees with his wisdom and his understanding. What a great image we have there of Jesus sort of wowing everybody. It is in this story a very clear signal for us of the man who is to come. the man who is to come, is independent of his family, and we'll see that in a little bit. I mean, he's on his own. He becomes something autonomous in the end from his family, at least for a time. His attraction to the temple, his attraction or his capabilities of wisdom, which continued to astound people in his adult ministry. And then this wonderful statement, why are you surprised to find me here? Didn't you know I would need to be in my Father's house? Now, no offense, Joseph, but here Jesus proclaims who his Father truly is. And that, of course, sets us on a course. We don't know why that's the only story that we have. It gives us a lot to work on, but we do know that there were those who weren't satisfied with that as the only story of his adolescence. And so in the infancy gospel of Thomas, written about 150 A.D., we hear a whole bunch of stories about Jesus, and to some degree, he turns out to be kind of an evil Dennis the Menace, if you remember that character. He's at 5-year-old, he's able to, during the Sabbath, create clay sparrows, 12 clay sparrows. Someone turns him in to his father for working on the Sabbath. Its father comes and says, why are you working on the Sabbath? You know you shouldn't do that. And Jesus says, I'm not working, waves his hands, and the sparrows fly away. So there is no evidence of him breaking the Sabbath. Doesn't sound like a real Jesus story, but it's interesting. He is kind of malevolent at times, withers the body of a boy who disrupts his playtime, kills another, blinds parents who are critical of him, and chides a teacher who tries to just simply teach him the alphabet. On the other hand, he also raises a boy from the dead, heals a boy who's wounded by cutting himself with an axe, and he helps his father out in a way that I know I could appreciate, and that is when his father does not measure twice to cut once and ends up with a board too short to use, Jesus kindly extends it miraculously by pulling on it. Again, do these seem like stories that should show up in the Bible? No. They're stories that came out of the imaginations of people who loved Jesus. They're folk tales, and they came later, and they have no place in our scripture, but they're, give us an idea what people were thinking in addition to the scripture about Jesus. Hopefully no one took these too seriously. The one piece that I found helpful was that when he heals a sick child, the family member says, truly, he is a God. And those are the words of the centurion at the crucifixion, Son of God. And they do tell us that at least by the end of this infancy gospel of Thomas, it is becoming apparent that he's something special. You can find the infancy gospel of Thomas on the internet quite easily, and it is found called the infancy gospel of Thomas, again written probably 30 or 40 years after the book of Revelation, so quite a bit later. He's known in Luke chapter 3 as the son of Joseph when he first steps out in his ministry. You know the story of the water into wine at the wedding in Cana. His mom and brothers are noted for being there, and in his relationship with his mom, we may garner a little from that, his willingness to obey her, despite the fact that clearly once he had performed this miracle, it was his coming out miracle, and that people would start to perhaps do what exactly happened, which was to seek him for the miracles and not as much for the message. But he still honors her. Now, it's not so clear that they honored him in every aspect. In Mark chapter 3, he's preaching, and his family comes and very specifically said that they came to get him because he was out of his mind. That's in Mark chapter 3:20, out of his mind. So in Mark's gospel anyway, his family isn't too sure what to make of what's happened to him. Isn't he the carpenter's son, people say? What in the world is this? Isn't he just the kid that we knew in Nazareth? And maybe that's what they felt. The question would be, if Mary knew more, then why is Mary surprised? I don't know. Maybe it's the form that his ministry is taking, that she's surprised by. Certainly going to the cross would not have been what she thought was going to happen when she was told she was going to have the Son of God. At one point in the time, they come to outside a door where he's preaching, and they come to, I guess, maybe fetch him or talk to him. And they said, your mother and your brothers are outside. And he says, who is my mother? Who is my brother? They are the people who do my Father's will. And this is a hard statement for some of us to hear. It seems to be disrespecting his father and mother. In fact, later on he says, he who does not hate his father or mother cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. But what's happening here is that Jesus is making clear that there is a decisive moment. Your family can't hold you back from following Jesus. And some people have had to really experience that in their life. They've had to not hate in a vindictive way, but put themselves apart from their family in order to be a part of the discipleship of Jesus, the family of God. And Jesus knew that then, and he wanted to give us comfort now. Obviously, he honored his father and mother. On the cross, he makes sure that his mother's taken care of by giving her into the keeping of one of the disciples. So Jesus, the family man, it helps us understand that Jesus, the man who welcomed children, Jesus, the man who was kind and deferential to women, Jesus, the man who created a new family that you and I are part of today, where we call each other brothers and sisters. I am glad that we have these glimpses. I wish there were more, but we can be content that Jesus was a family man in a very unique and special way that can be a blessing for us to know and to imitate as we follow him. In his name, hope that you enjoyed that, and we look forward to seeing you next week.